Hey, it's Natalie. My sister invited me to her dress fitting just to humiliate me in front of strangers. She made me stand there while she mocked every insecurity I'd ever shared with her in confidence. When I finally broke down crying, she laughed and told the staff to throw me out like garbage. I left that boutique shattered, mascara running down my face, clutching a silver locket our grandmother gave me. But what Victoria didn't know was that I had access to something she'd forgotten about. One email. One click. And her entire $24,000 wedding came crashing down in less than 12 hours. The look on her face when she realized what I'd done. I'll remember that forever. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from, and if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow, I've saved something extra special for you. The morning started with drizzle. That soft Portland rain that doesn't quite soak you but leaves everything damp and gray. I stood outside Enchanted Bridal Boutique on West Burnside, staring at the gold lettering on the glass door. My reflection stared back, pale and uncertain. I wore jeans and a cream sweater, nothing fancy. Victoria had specifically told me not to dress up. "This is just a quick fitting," she'd said over the phone. "Very casual. Don't make it a production." I should have known better. The boutique smelled like gardenias and expensive perfume. Crystal chandeliers hung from exposed brick ceilings. Velvet settees in dusty rows lined the walls. A woman in all black with perfectly coiffed silver hair approached me immediately, her smile professional but cold. "Appointment name?" she asked without greeting me first. "Harper," I said quietly. "I'm here for Victoria Harper's fitting." Her eyes flicked down to a leather-bound appointment book. She nodded once and gestured toward the back. "Through the archway. Second room on the left. Your party is already here." My stomach twisted. Party. Victoria said it would just be her, me, and maybe Mom. I walked through the archway into a hallway lined with framed photographs of brides. Smiling faces. Perfect hair. Perfect lives. I reached the second door and paused when I heard laughter. Multiple voices. Female. Loud. I pushed the door open. Victoria stood on a circular platform in front of 3 full-length mirrors, wearing a gown that looked like it cost more than my car. Ivory silk with delicate lace appliques cascading down the bodice. The train pooled around her feet like spilled cream. She looked stunning. Around her sat 6 women on a curved sofa. Mom was there, of course, dressed in a tailored pantsuit, her hair blown out perfectly. Then Brooke, Victoria's best friend since college, holding a champagne flute. Lily from Victoria's office. 2 women I didn't recognize. And Patricia Vance, the wedding planner, tapping notes into her tablet. Nobody acknowledged me at first. I stood near the doorway, hands clasped in front of me, feeling like an intruder. Finally, Victoria's eyes landed on me in the mirror. "Oh," she said flatly. "You actually came." "Of course I came," I said, trying to smile. "You invited me." She turned slowly on the platform, the gown swishing with the movement. "I invited you because Mom insisted. Let's not pretend this was my idea." The room went quiet. I felt heat creep up my neck. One of the women I didn't know whispered something to the other. Mom sipped her champagne and said nothing. I forced myself to walk further into the room and sat down on the edge of a velvet ottoman near the corner. The fabric was soft under my palms, but my hands were trembling. Victoria turned back to the mirror, tilting her head as she examined the dress. "Camila," she called out. The seamstress, a petite woman with kind eyes and graying hair pulled into a bun, appeared from behind a curtain. "Yes, Miss Harper." Victoria pointed to the waist. "This feels loose. Can you take it in another half-inch?" Camila nodded and knelt beside her with a pincushion strapped to her wrist. Brooke leaned forward, swirling her champagne. "Honestly, Vic, you look like a literal princess. Derek is going to lose his mind." Victoria smiled, the kind of smile that didn't reach her eyes. He better. I've spent months planning this. Patricia tapped her tablet screen. Speaking of which, we need to finalize the floral arrangements by Friday. The deposit for the arch alone is $8,000. I need confirmation. Victoria waved her hand dismissively. Done. Just send the invoice to Daddy's accountant. I sat there silently, watching this performance. This wasn't about a dress fitting. This was a stage. And I was the audience nobody wanted. Mom finally looked at me. Natalie, you're awfully quiet. I met her gaze. I'm just watching. She raised an eyebrow. Watching what, exactly? Her tone was sharp. I don't know, I said carefully. Victoria in her dress. Isn't that why I'm here? Victoria laughed, but it wasn't warm. It was the laugh she used when she wanted to cut someone down without losing her composure. That's adorable. She turned toward me fully now, hands on her hips. You really think you're here to support me? I blinked. I stayed quiet. She stepped down from the platform, the train dragging behind her like a royal cape. You're here because Mom guilt tripped me into including you. Because apparently, it would look bad if my only sister wasn't at my dress fitting. My throat tightened. I could feel everyone's eyes on me now. Victoria crossed her arms, standing just a few feet away. Let me ask you something, Natalie. When was the last time you accomplished anything worth celebrating? The question hit like a slap. I opened my mouth but no words came. She tilted her head, mock concern on her face. No. Nothing. Because from where I'm standing, you've been drifting through life for years. No career. No relationship. No direction. Meanwhile, I'm getting married to a man who owns a tech consulting firm. We just closed on a house in Westmoreland. And I'm standing here in a dress that costs more than you make in 3 months. I felt tears prick the corners of my eyes. I bit the inside of my cheek hard, trying to hold them back. Brooke snickered. One of the strangers looked uncomfortable and glanced away. Mom sipped her champagne again and said absolutely nothing. I swallowed hard. Victoria, why are you doing this? She laughed again. Doing what? Telling the truth? Camila stood up slowly from where she'd been pinning the hem. Miss Harper, perhaps we should continue with the fitting? Victoria ignored her. She kept her eyes locked on mine. Do you know what's exhausting, Natalie? Having to pretend that you matter. Having to include you in things because it's expected. You've been the charity case of this family for years. I felt something crack inside my chest. My hands were shaking now. I could feel my pulse in my throat. And the worst part? Victoria continued, stepping closer. You act so wounded all the time. Like the world owes you something. But nobody owes you anything. You're 28 years old. Grow up. That's when the tears spilled over. I couldn't stop them. They ran hot down my cheeks and I didn't bother wiping them away. I just sat there, frozen, as my sister stood in her perfect dress in her perfect life and dismantled me piece by piece in front of strangers. One of the women on the sofa shifted uncomfortably. This feels really personal, she muttered to Lily. Maybe we should step out. Victoria spun toward her. Stay. She looked back at me. If Natalie wants to cry, let her cry. She's been doing it for attention since we were kids. I stood up abruptly, my legs weak beneath me. I need to leave. Good idea, Victoria said coolly. The door's right there. I turned toward the exit, my vision blurred. I heard Brooke whisper something and someone else stifled a laugh. I reached for the door handle, my hand slipping the first time because my palm was sweaty. And then I heard Mom's voice, calm and detached. Natalie, don't be so dramatic. I froze. I turned back slowly. She was looking at me like I was a child throwing a tantrum. You're embarrassing yourself, she said simply. Something inside me shattered completely. Not broke. Shattered. Into 1,000 irreparable pieces. I looked at Victoria. Then at Mom. Then at every single woman in that room who had watched this happen and said nothing. I walked out. I didn't run. I didn't slam the door. I just walked. Down the hallway. Past the silver-haired woman at the desk. Out into the rain. The street was busy. People rushed past with umbrellas. Cars hissed through puddles. I stood on the sidewalk, rain mixing with my tears, and reached into my pocket. My fingers found the silver locket Grandma Helen had given me before she died. I held it tightly, the metal cold against my palm. It was the only thing that felt real. I walked 5 blocks before I stopped. My clothes were soaked. My hair stuck to my face. I ducked into a coffee shop and sat in the corner, trembling. I ordered nothing. I just sat. The barista glanced at me a few times but didn't ask if I was okay. Preparing and narrating this story took us a lot of time, so if you are enjoying it, subscribe to our channel, it means a lot to us. Now back to the story. I pulled out my phone. My hands were still shaking. I stared at the screen for a long time, not really seeing it. And then I remembered something. Something Victoria had forgotten about. 2 years ago, when she and Derek got engaged, she'd asked me to help her set up a wedding planning account. She didn't want to deal with the tech stuff, she said. So I created the email. I set up the password. I linked it to all her vendors. Florist. Caterer. Venue coordinator. Photographer. Band. Everything. And because Victoria never changed the password, I still had access. I opened my email app. My thumb hovered over the screen. I could see the inbox. Hundreds of emails. Contracts. Invoices. Confirmations. Deposits. I scrolled slowly. There was the final payment reminder for the venue. $24,000 due in full by Friday. There was the florist's invoice. The caterer's schedule. The photographer's shot list. The band's set list approval. Everything. Her entire wedding. Right there. In my hands. I sat there for a long time, staring at that screen. The rain pounded against the window. My coffee sat untouched on the table. And I made a choice. I opened a new email. I addressed it to the venue coordinator at Columbia River Gorge Estate. Subject line, wedding cancellation, Harper/Ashford event. I typed carefully. My hand steadied as I wrote. Dear Ms. Vance and Columbia River Gorge Estate team, due to unforeseen personal circumstances, we regret to inform you that the Harper/Ashford wedding scheduled for October 7th has been cancelled effective immediately. Please process the cancellation per the terms outlined in our contract and confirm receipt of this notice. We understand that deposits are non-refundable as stated in the agreement. Thank you for your understanding. Warm regards, Victoria Harper. I read it 3 times. Then I hit send. The whoosh sound felt louder than it should have. I sat back in my chair. My heart pounded. I wasn't done. I opened another email. This time to the florist. Same message. Cancelled. Sent. Then the caterer. Cancelled. Sent. Then the photographer. Cancelled. Sent. The band. Cancelled. Sent. The cake designer. Cancelled. Sent. One by one, I systematically dismantled my sister's wedding. It took 11 minutes. 11 emails. 11 clicks. And it was done. I sat there in that coffee shop, soaked and shaking, and I waited. I knew what was coming. I knew the chaos that was about to unfold. And for the first time in years, I didn't feel small. I didn't feel invisible. I felt something sharper. Something colder. I felt powerful. My phone buzzed. A text from Mom. "We need to talk about your behavior today." That was unacceptable. I didn't reply. Another buzz. This time from Victoria. "You're pathetic." I turned my phone face down on the table. Outside, the rain finally started to let up. Light broke through the clouds in thin streaks. People walked past the window, going about their lives, unaware that somewhere across the city, a $24,000 wedding was collapsing in real time. I reached into my pocket and held the locket again. Grandma Helen used to tell me that some people mistake kindness for weakness. That they push and push until you have nothing left to give. And then they're shocked when you finally push back. I stood up. I left the coffee shop. I walked back to my apartment in the Pearl District. The streets smelled like wet pavement and fallen leaves. By the time I got home, my phone had 17 missed calls. I didn't check them. I took a hot shower. I changed into dry clothes. I made tea. And I waited. Because I knew. I knew that by tomorrow morning, everything would explode. And this time, I wouldn't be the one left crying. The emails started arriving at 6:43 the next morning. I was awake already, sitting at my small kitchen table with a mug of coffee that had gone cold. My phone sat in front of me, screen dark. I hadn't checked it since yesterday afternoon. I knew what was waiting. The first buzz came sharp and insistent. Then another. Then 3 more in rapid succession. The phone vibrated so hard it nearly fell off the table. I picked it up slowly. 32 missed calls. 47 text messages. 15 voicemails. I scrolled through the notifications without opening any of them. Victoria's name appeared over and over. Mom's too. Derek's number showed up 6 times. Even Brooke had tried reaching me. But there was one name that caught my attention. Aunt Diane. My mother's younger sister. The only person in my family who had ever treated me like I mattered. I opened her text first. "Natalie, I don't know what's happening, but your mother is losing her mind. Call me when you can. I'm worried about you." I set the phone down and took a breath. The apartment was quiet except for the sound of rain starting up again outside. Portland never really stopped raining in September. It just paused occasionally to gather strength. I thought about calling Diane back. But I wasn't ready yet. I needed to see how far this had spread first. I opened my laptop and logged into the wedding planning email account. The inbox had exploded overnight. 43 new messages. The first one was from Patricia Vance, the wedding planner, sent at 11:22 last night. Subject line, urgent, cancellation confirmation needed. I opened it. "Ms. Harper, I received your cancellation notice this evening and I must say I'm quite shocked. Given that we are less than 2 weeks from your wedding date, this is highly irregular. I've attempted to reach you by phone multiple times without success. Please call me immediately to discuss next steps and the financial implications of this decision. The venue has confirmed receipt of your cancellation and is proceeding with contract termination. Please be advised that all deposits are forfeited per the signed agreement. This includes the venue deposit of $8,000, the floral deposit of $3,200, and the catering deposit of $6,500. I need to hear from you directly before I proceed with notifying remaining vendors. Regards, Patricia Vance." I leaned back in my chair. So it was real. The venue had already confirmed. The money was already gone. I scrolled through more emails. The florist had responded with a curt acknowledgement and a reminder that their cancellation policy required full payment regardless. The caterer had sent a more sympathetic message but confirmed that per their contract, cancellations within 30 days required 90% of the total balance. The photographer sounded genuinely confused, asking if there was a family emergency and if they could help in any way. Then I saw the email that made my stomach flip. It was from Derek. Sent directly to the wedding planning account at 2:37 in the morning. "Victoria, what the hell is going on? Patricia called me at midnight saying you canceled everything. I've been trying to reach you for hours. Your phone goes straight to voicemail. Your mom won't tell me anything except that there's a family situation. Did something happen? Are you okay? Please call me. I'm freaking out here. I'm coming to your parents' house first thing in the morning. We need to talk about this. Derek. I closed the laptop. My hands were steady now. The shaking from yesterday was gone. I felt calm. Clear. Like I'd been living underwater my whole life and had finally broken the surface. My phone buzzed again. This time it was a call. Victoria. I watched her name flash on the screen. Once. Twice. 3 times. Then it went to voicemail. 30 seconds later, a text. Answer your phone right now. Another buzz. I know you did this. Another. You're going to fix this or I swear to God, Natalie. Another. Mom is calling the police. Another. You destroyed everything. You psychotic bitch. I set the phone down and stood up. I walked to the window and looked out at the wet streets below. People were heading to work. A woman walked a small dog that kept trying to bite at the rain. A delivery truck double parked and the driver jogged into a building with a stack of boxes. Normal life. Continuing. Unaware. I thought about Victoria standing in that boutique yesterday. The way she'd looked at me like I was nothing. The way she'd catalogued my failures in front of strangers. The way Mom had sat there and let it happen. The way every single person in that room had watched me cry and done nothing. My phone rang again. This time it was Mom. I answered. The second I pressed the green button, her voice came through like a gunshot. What have you done? Her voice was shaking. Not with sadness. With rage. I said nothing. Natalie, do you have any idea what you've done? Do you have any concept of the damage you've caused? Still nothing. She took a sharp breath. Victoria is hysterical. Derek is threatening to call off the engagement entirely. We've lost nearly $18,000 in deposits. The venue is refusing to rebook. The florist is demanding full payment despite the cancellation. This is a disaster. A complete disaster. I finally spoke. My voice came out calmer than I expected. I'm sorry you're upset. Upset? She practically screamed the word. You think I'm upset? You sabotaged your sister's wedding. I leaned against the window frame. She sabotaged me first. There was a beat of silence. Then Mom's voice dropped to something colder. More controlled. You will fix this. You will call every single vendor and tell them there was a mistake. You will grovel and beg them to reinstate everything. And then you will apologize to your sister on your hands and knees if that's what it takes. I felt something harden in my chest. No. What did you just say? I said no. I'm not fixing anything. There was a sharp intake of breath. Then she hung up. The line went dead. I stood there holding the phone for a moment longer before setting it down. My hands were still steady. The apartment felt very still. Very quiet. I knew this wasn't over. I knew it was just beginning. But I also knew I wasn't going back. Not this time. An hour later, there was a knock at my door. Loud. Insistent. I looked through the peephole. Victoria. She was alone. Her hair was pulled back in a messy ponytail. No makeup. Red eyes. She looked like she hadn't slept. I opened the door but didn't step aside. She stared at me. Her jaw was tight. Her hands were clenched into fists at her sides. Let me in. No. Natalie, let me in right now. I stayed in the doorway. If you want to talk, we can talk here. Her eyes filled with tears. Real ones this time. Not performative. Not calculated. Just raw and desperate. You ruined my life. I didn't move. You humiliated me yesterday. In front of everyone. That's not the same thing. She nearly shouted it. Yes, it is. She shook her head, tears spilling over. Do you have any idea what you've done? Derek thinks I'm unstable. He thinks I canceled the wedding without telling him. He's questioning everything. Mom and Dad are furious. I've lost thousands of dollars. Vendors are refusing to work with me. My wedding is gone, Natalie. Gone. I felt nothing. No guilt. No satisfaction. Just a strange emptiness. You made me feel like nothing, I said quietly. You stood there in your expensive dress and tore me apart for entertainment. She wiped her face with the back of her hand. I didn't mean it. I looked at her. Yes, you did. She opened her mouth to argue, but nothing came out. Because we both knew it was true. She had meant every word. She'd been saying those things to me in different ways for years. Yesterday she just finally said them out loud. Please, she whispered. Please fix this. I need you to fix this. I shook my head slowly. I can't. You won't, you mean? No. I can't. Even if I wanted to, the vendors won't reverse it now. The contracts are terminated. The deposits are gone. It's done. Her face crumpled. She actually sank down against the hallway wall and put her head in her hands. I stood there watching her. Part of me wanted to feel something. Sympathy maybe. Regret. But I didn't. I just felt tired. After a long moment, she looked up at me. Her eyes were hard now. The tears were gone. This isn't over. I know. You're going to pay for this. Probably. She stood up slowly. Mom's right. You've always been jealous. You've always wanted what I have. And the second you got a chance to destroy it, you did. I met her gaze. I didn't want what you have, Victoria. I just wanted you to stop treating me like I was worthless. She stared at me for a long moment. Then she turned and walked away. I watched her disappear down the hallway. Heard the elevator ding. And then she was gone. I closed the door and locked it. My phone buzzed again. Another text from Aunt Diane. Natalie, your mother just called me. I think you need to talk to someone outside the family. Can we meet? I stared at the message. Diane had always been different. She'd married a man Mom didn't approve of. Moved to Seattle for 10 years. Only came back to Portland when her husband passed away. She didn't come to family dinners. Didn't attend the country club events. Didn't play the games Mom and Victoria lived for. I texted back. Coffee? An hour later I was sitting across from Diane at a small cafe in Northwest Portland. She looked exactly like I remembered. Dark hair cut short. No jewelry except a simple silver ring. Jeans and a flannel shirt. She didn't look like Mom at all. She ordered us both coffee and waited until the server left before speaking. Your mother told me you sabotaged Victoria's wedding. I wrapped my hands around my mug. I canceled it. She raised an eyebrow. That's a pretty significant distinction. I took a sip. It was too hot, but I didn't care. Victoria humiliated me at her dress fitting. She said things. Cruel things. In front of everyone. And Mom just sat there. Diane nodded slowly. And you retaliated. Yes. She leaned back in her chair. Good. I blinked. What? She shrugged. I said good. Victoria has been a nightmare since she was 16. Your mother enabled every bit of it. Somebody needed to knock her off that pedestal eventually. I stared at her. You're not mad? Natalie, I love your mother. She's my sister. But she raised Victoria to be a carbon copy of herself. Entitled. Image obsessed. Cruel when it serves her. And she raised you to be the supporting character in their story. I felt something loosen in my chest. Diane reached across the table and put her hand over mine. What you did was nuclear. It's going to have consequences. But I don't think it was wrong. I felt tears sting my eyes for the first time since yesterday. Diane squeezed my hand. Tell me what happened. So I did. I told her everything. The dress fitting. The things Victoria said. The way Mom stayed silent. The way I walked out into the rain and sat in that coffee shop and made a choice. When I finished, Diane sat back and exhaled slowly. How much money did they lose? Around 18,000 in deposits. She whistled low. That's going to sting. Do you regret it? I thought about the question. Really thought about it. No. She smiled. Then don't apologize. I looked at her. Mom wants me to fix it. Of course she does. Because if you fix it, then she doesn't have to admit that Victoria did anything wrong. I felt something click into place. A piece of understanding I'd been missing my whole life. Diane leaned forward. Here's what's going to happen. Your mother is going to pressure you relentlessly. Victoria is going to paint herself as the victim. They're going to tell everyone you're unstable. Jealous. Vindictive. They're going to try to make you the villain in this story. What do I do? You hold your ground. You don't apologize. You don't backtrack. And you remember that you didn't start this. You just finished it. We sat there in that cafe for another hour. Diane told me stories I'd never heard. About growing up with Mom. About the way their mother had pitted them against each other. About the way she'd finally walked away and built her own life. It felt like permission. Like proof that leaving was possible. When we finally stood to go, Diane hugged me. Tight and fierce. You're stronger than they ever gave you credit for. Don't forget that. I walked back to my apartment as the afternoon light began to fade. The rain had stopped. The streets smelled clean. My phone had been buzzing the entire time I'd been with Diane, but I hadn't looked at it. When I finally did, there were 23 new messages. Most from Victoria and Mom. But there was one from a number I didn't recognize. I opened it. Miss Harper, this is Camila Rodriguez from Enchanted Bridal. I was the seamstress at your sister's fitting yesterday. I wanted to reach out because I saw what happened. I've worked in bridal for 15 years and I've never seen anyone treated the way you were treated. If you need someone to corroborate your account of events, I'm willing to do so. What your sister said was unacceptable. You deserved better. I have security footage from the boutique if it becomes necessary. Please don't hesitate to contact me. I read the message 3 times. Security footage. I hadn't even thought about cameras. But of course there would be cameras. High-end boutiques always had security. Which meant there was proof. Actual documented evidence of what Victoria had said. What she'd done. I saved Camila's number. I didn't know if I'd need it yet. But I had it. Just in case. The sun was setting now. Orange lights spilled across my apartment. I stood at the window and watched the city settle into evening. Somewhere across town, Victoria was probably still crying. Mom was probably making phone calls. Trying to do damage control. Trying to spin this into something she could manage. But I wasn't there. I wasn't apologizing. I wasn't shrinking myself down to fit back into their story. For the first time in my entire life, I had taken up space. Real space. The kind that couldn't be ignored or dismissed. And it felt terrifying and liberating all at once. My phone buzzed one more time. A voicemail from Derek. I almost didn't listen to it. But something made me press play. His voice came through tired and confused. Natalie, it's Derek. I don't know what's going on with you and Victoria, but I need to understand what happened. She's telling me one story. Your mom is telling me another. And you're not responding to anyone. I just need to know if you're okay. And if there's something I should know about Victoria that I don't. Call me back if you can. I saved the voicemail. I didn't call him back. Not yet. But I heard something in his voice. Doubt. He was starting to question things. Starting to see cracks in the perfect image Victoria had built. And that meant the foundation was shifting. I made dinner. Simple pasta with olive oil and garlic. I ate slowly, savoring the quiet. No one was yelling. No one was demanding anything from me. It was just me. Alone. And for the first time in as long as I could remember, that felt like enough. When I finally went to bed, I didn't check my phone again. I just turned it off completely. Set it on the nightstand. And closed my eyes. Tomorrow would bring more chaos. More anger. More consequences. But tonight, I let myself rest. Because the war wasn't over. It was just beginning. And I needed to be ready for what came next. 3 days passed before the next explosion hit. I spent those days in relative silence. I went to work at the nonprofit where I managed donor relations. I came home. I cooked simple meals. I ignored the constant buzzing of my phone. Mom had stopped calling after the second day. Victoria's messages became less frequent but more venomous. But I held firm. I didn't respond. I didn't engage. I just waited. On Thursday morning, I received an email that changed everything. It came from an address I didn't recognize at first. Gerald Stevens, CPA. The subject line read, Urgent Financial Inquiry Regarding Harper Family Trust. I opened it with my coffee halfway to my lips. Ms. Natalie Harper, my name is Gerald Stevens and I've served as the accountant for your family's financial affairs for the past 12 years. I'm reaching out because a significant discrepancy has come to my attention regarding the Harper Family Trust established by your late grandmother, Helen Harper. In reviewing recent expenditures related to your sister's wedding, I discovered that funds were withdrawn from the trust without proper authorization. Specifically, $26,000 was transferred to cover wedding-related expenses including venue deposits, vendor payments, and dress alterations. According to the trust documents, any withdrawal over $10,000 requires approval from both living beneficiaries. You and your sister. However, I have no record of your signature or consent for these transactions. I would appreciate the opportunity to discuss this matter with you at your earliest convenience. Please contact my office to arrange a meeting. This is a time-sensitive matter that requires immediate attention. Sincerely, Gerald Stevens. I set my coffee down carefully. My hands had started shaking. I read the email 3 more times to make sure I understood what it was saying. Grandma Helen had left a trust. For both of us. Victoria and me. Equal beneficiaries. And Victoria had been taking money from it without my knowledge or consent. I looked at the timestamp on the email. Sent at 7:42 this morning. It was now 8:15. I grabbed my phone and called the number listed in his signature. A receptionist answered on the second ring. Stevens Financial Services, how may I direct your call? Gerald Stevens, please. This is Natalie Harper returning his email. One moment. The hold music was classical. Vivaldi, I think. My leg bounced under the table. After 30 seconds, a man's voice came through. Professional but warm. Ms. Harper, thank you for calling back so quickly. This is Gerald Stevens. I received your email. I need to understand what's happening. Of course. Let me pull up your file. I heard keyboard clicks. Then a pause. Ms. Harper, Are you aware that your grandmother established a trust fund for you and your sister in 2011? No. I had no idea. He made a small sound of surprise. That's concerning. The trust was established with an initial deposit of $150,000. It was meant to provide financial support for both of you as you entered adulthood. Education expenses, housing down payments, emergency needs. The funds were to be managed conservatively with both beneficiaries having equal say over withdrawals exceeding $10,000. I felt my chest tighten. How much is left in the trust? He paused. As of this morning, $12,347. The air left my lungs. What? Over the past 6 years, there have been numerous withdrawals. Most of them authorized by your sister and your mother, who served as the trustee until last year when Victoria assumed that role. The withdrawals were for various expenses. Victoria's graduate school tuition. Her car lease. Apartment deposits. And most recently, wedding expenses totaling $26,000. My vision blurred at the edges. I never signed anything. I never authorized any of this. That's correct. Which is why I'm contacting you now. Legally, these withdrawals constitute a breach of fiduciary duty. Your sister, as trustee, was required to obtain your written consent for any amount over $10,000. She did not. What does that mean? It means you have grounds for legal action. You could file a claim for misappropriation of trust funds. Depending on how a court views the situation, your sister could be required to repay the unauthorized withdrawals with interest. We're talking about well over $100,000. I leaned back in my chair. The kitchen suddenly felt too small. Why are you telling me this? Why now? He cleared his throat. Honestly? Because when I processed the cancellation refunds from the wedding vendors, I noticed the discrepancies. I went back through the records and realized that none of the major withdrawals had your signature. I've been your family's accountant for over a decade, Miss Harper. I knew your grandmother personally. This isn't what she would have wanted. I pressed my palm against my forehead. What do I do? That's up to you. But I'd recommend speaking with an attorney who specializes in trust and estate law. I can provide you with a full accounting of every transaction if you decide to pursue this. I can also testify to the irregular nature of these withdrawals. Do you have someone you'd recommend? He gave me 2 names. I wrote them both down on the back of an envelope. We spoke for another 10 minutes. He walked me through the timeline. Showed me how the withdrawals had accelerated over the past 2 years. How my mother had quietly transferred trustee responsibilities to Victoria right after Grandma's funeral. How neither of them had ever mentioned the trust to me at all. When I hung up, I sat in my kitchen staring at the wall. My coffee had gone cold. The morning light slanted through the window. Outside, someone was mowing a lawn. The sound felt distant. Unreal. I thought about all the times Victoria had flaunted her life. Her graduate degree. Her car. Her apartment in the nice part of town. The engagement ring that cost more than most people's annual salary. She'd acted like she'd earned all of it. Like she was just more successful. More capable. Better. But she'd been spending my money. Money Grandma had left for both of us. Money I never even knew existed. I picked up my phone and called the first attorney on the list. A woman named Rachel Park. Her assistant answered and I explained briefly why I was calling. She put me through immediately. Miss Harper, I'm glad you reached out. Gerald Stevens contacted me this morning to give me a heads up that you might call. He's very concerned about what he's found. Can you come in today? I checked the time. It was 8:45. I was supposed to be at work in an hour. Yes. I can be there by 11. Perfect. I'll have my paralegal pull together everything we need to review. Bring any documentation you have. Bank statements, emails, anything that references the trust or your grandmother's estate. I spent the next hour going through my email, searching for anything with Grandma's name. I found old birthday messages, photos she'd sent, a recipe for her lemon bars that I'd saved. But nothing about a trust. Nothing about money. Nothing financial at all. Which made sense now. They'd hidden it from me deliberately. I grabbed my laptop, my phone, and the envelope with the attorney's address. I texted my supervisor that I had a family emergency and would be working remotely. Then I drove across town to Rachel Park's office. The building was modest. Red brick. 3rd floor walk up. The waiting area had 2 chairs and a small table with outdated magazines. A young man at the desk smiled and checked me in. Rachel appeared a few minutes later. She was younger than I expected. Maybe late 30s. Black hair pulled into a low bun. Sharp eyes behind wire-rimmed glasses. She shook my hand firmly. Come on back. Her office was small but organized. Shelves lined with law books. A desk covered in neatly stacked files. She gestured to a chair across from her and sat down. Tell me everything. So I did. I started with Grandma Helen. How close we'd been. How she used to take me to Powell's bookstore every Saturday when I was little. How she'd taught me to bake. How she'd been the only person who made me feel seen. Then I told her about the years after she died. How distant Mom became. How Victoria's life seemed to explode with opportunity while mine stayed small and stagnant. How I'd assumed it was just luck. Just the natural difference between someone successful and someone like me. Rachel took notes. She didn't interrupt. When I got to the part about the dress fitting, her pen paused. She looked up. What exactly did your sister say to you? I repeated it as best as I could remember. The comments about my lack of direction. The comparison to her accomplishments. The way she'd called me a charity case. Rachel's expression didn't change, but her jaw tightened slightly. And then you canceled the wedding. Yes. Using access you had to her vendor accounts. Yes. She set down her pen. That's going to complicate things. I felt my stomach drop. What do you mean? She leaned back in her chair. What you did, legally speaking, could be construed as interference with contractual obligations. Your sister could argue that you caused her financial harm intentionally. If she decides to pursue legal action against you, that's going to be her angle. But she stole from me. I know. And we can prove that. But 2 wrongs don't make a right in the eyes of the law. What you did was reactive and arguably vindictive. A judge isn't going to ignore that. I felt heat rise in my face. So I'm just supposed to let her get away with it? No. We're going to fight. But you need to understand that this is going to get messy. Your family is going to paint you as unstable. They're going to use the wedding cancellation as evidence that you're acting out of spite rather than legitimate grievance. We need to be smarter than they are. How? She opened a folder and pulled out a printed spreadsheet. This is the accounting Gerald sent over this morning. Every withdrawal from the trust for the past 6 years. She slid it across the desk. I scanned the columns. Dates. Amounts. Descriptions. Graduate tuition, $14,000. Vehicle lease buyout, $18,000. Security deposit and first month rent, $9,500. Wedding venue deposit, $8,000. The list went on. Page after page. My hands trembled as I flipped through them. Rachel pointed to a line near the bottom. This one is particularly egregious. $5,200 for a vacation to Cabo. Described as emergency medical expense. I stared at it. I remember that trip. Victoria posted about it all over social media. She said Derek surprised her with it for her birthday. Rachel nodded. That's fraud. Your sister deliberately misrepresented the purpose of the withdrawal. If we can prove a pattern of deception, that strengthens your case significantly. What do we do first? We file a petition with the probate court to remove your sister as trustee and freeze the remaining assets. Then we file a civil claim for breach of fiduciary duty and demand full restitution of unauthorized withdrawals. We'll also request an audit of all estate-related transactions going back to your grandmother's death. How long will this take? Months. Maybe longer. And it's going to cost money up front. Legal fees, court costs, expert witnesses. I can work with you on payment plans, but you need to be prepared for this to be expensive. I thought about the $12,000 still sitting in the trust. The only money I had access to. How much are we talking? She wrote a number on a post-it note and slid it across the desk. I looked at it and felt my throat tighten. $5,000 retainer. Then hourly billing after that. I'll do everything I can to keep costs down, but trust litigation isn't cheap. I sat there staring at that number. It was more than I had in my savings account. More than I could easily access. But then I thought about Victoria standing in that boutique. I thought about Mom sitting silent while I was torn apart. I thought about 6 years of theft. 6 years of being erased. I looked up at Rachel. Let's do it. She smiled. It wasn't warm exactly. It was the smile of someone preparing for battle. Good. I'll start drafting the paperwork today. I need you to write down everything you remember about your relationship with your grandmother. Any conversations about her wishes for you. Any promises she made. Anything that demonstrates her intent was for you to benefit equally from the trust. I can do that. She stood and walked to a filing cabinet. One more thing. She pulled out a small digital recorder. I want you to document everything going forward. Every conversation with your family. Every threat. Every attempt to manipulate you. If they contact you, record it. Oregon is a one-party consent state, which means you don't need their permission. She handed me the recorder. This is going to get ugly. They're going to try to intimidate you into dropping this. Don't let them. I took the recorder. It was small. Fit in the palm of my hand. I will need you to be strong. Stronger than you've ever been. Can you do that? I thought about the past 3 days. The silence I'd maintained. The ground I'd held. I met her eyes. Yes. We shook hands again. She walked me to the door. I'll be in touch within 48 hours. In the meantime, do not engage with your family unless absolutely necessary. And if you do, document everything. I left her office and walked back to my car. The afternoon had turned gray. Clouds rolled in from the west. I sat in the driver's seat for a long time, hands on the wheel, staring at nothing. Then I drove to the bank. I withdrew every dollar from my savings account. $4,200. I'd add the rest on a credit card if I had to. This wasn't about money anymore. It was about something deeper. Something I couldn't name but felt in every cell of my body. When I got home, I opened my laptop and started writing. Everything Rachel had asked for. Memories of Grandma. The Saturdays at Powell's. The way she used to let me help her in the garden. The conversations we'd had about college. About my future. About wanting more for me than what Mom seemed to expect. I wrote for 3 hours straight. By the time I finished, it was nearly evening. My phone had been buzzing intermittently all day. I finally looked at it. 17 new messages. Most from Victoria. But there was one from a number I recognized now. Derek. I opened it. Natalie, I really need to talk to you. Victoria told me you've been having some kind of breakdown. That you're not thinking clearly. But I don't know if I believe her anymore. There are things that aren't adding up. Please call me. I stared at the message. Then I opened the recording app on my phone and called him back. He answered on the first ring. Natalie. Thank God. Hi, Derek. Are you okay? Everyone's saying you've lost it. I'm fine. I'm probably the most clear-headed I've been in years. He was quiet for a moment. What happened? Why did you cancel the wedding? Did Victoria tell you what she said to me at the dress fitting? She said you got emotional and walked out. She said you've always been sensitive and she didn't realize how badly you'd take her advice. I felt anger flare hot in my chest. It wasn't advice, Derek. She humiliated me. She listed every failure in my life in front of strangers. She called me a charity case. She told me I didn't matter. And my mother sat there and watched it happen. There was a long silence. That doesn't sound like advice. No. It doesn't. Victoria says you're jealous. That you've always resented her success. Do you believe that? Another pause. I don't know what to believe anymore. Natalie, is there something going on that I should know about? Something beyond the wedding? I took a breath. There's a lot going on. Things I'm just finding out about. Things that involve money and family and years of lies. But I can't talk about it yet. Not until I have all the facts. He exhaled slowly. This is really bad timing. We're supposed to get married in 9 days. Except we're not, because there's no venue, no flowers, no food, and no photographer. Could you reinstate everything if you wanted to? Probably not. Most of the vendors have moved on. Some are demanding payment for breach of contract. It's a mess. Are you still going to marry her? I don't know. Honestly, Natalie, I don't know anything anymore. I thought I knew who she was. But the past few days, the way she's been acting, the things she's been saying about you, it doesn't match the person I thought I was marrying. That's because you're finally seeing the real her. The line went quiet. I could hear him breathing. Traffic sounds in the background. He was outside somewhere. If I wanted to know the truth, he said slowly, would you tell me? When I can. When it's safe to. He seemed to understand what I meant. Okay. I'll wait. But Natalie, be careful. Your mom is talking about taking legal action. Restraining orders. Lawsuits. She's out for blood. I know. I'm ready. We hung up. I saved the recording and uploaded it to a cloud drive. Then I labeled it with the date and time. Rachel was right. This was going to get worse before it got better. But I wasn't backing down. Not now. Not after everything I'd learned. That night, I couldn't sleep. I lay in bed staring at the ceiling, listening to rain tap against the window. I kept thinking about Grandma Helen. About the trust she'd set up. The care she'd taken to make sure both Victoria and I would be okay. And how Mom and Victoria had twisted that care into something selfish. Something cruel. Around midnight, my phone lit up with a call. Unknown number. I almost didn't answer. But something made me pick up. Hello? Natalie, it's Camila. From the bridal boutique. Oh. Hi. I'm sorry to call so late. I got your number from the appointment records. I hope that's okay. It's fine. I wanted you to know that I spoke with the boutique owner today. I told her what happened at your sister's fitting. She was horrified. We've decided to ban your sister from the shop. She's no longer welcome here. I sat up in bed. Really? Yes. And I want you to know that I have the security footage saved. All of it. If you ever need it, for any reason, it's yours. My throat tightened. Thank you. That means more than you know. Your sister came back today, Camila continued. She tried to pick up her dress. We refused to release it to her until she settles her account. She caused a scene. Screamed at my manager. Threatened to sue us. It was ugly. I closed my eyes. I'm sorry you had to deal with that. Don't be sorry. You did nothing wrong. What she did to you was abuse. Plain and simple. And people like that don't get to just walk away without consequences. We talked for a few more minutes. She told me she'd been working in bridal for 16 years. That she'd seen all kinds of family dynamics. But what Victoria did was the worst she'd ever witnessed. Before we hung up, she said one more thing. You're stronger than you think. Don't let them convince you otherwise. I thanked her and ended the call. Then I lay back down and stared at the ceiling some more. But this time, I didn't feel alone. Somewhere out there, people were seeing the truth. People were choosing my side. Not because I'd manipulated them. Not because I'd lied. But because the truth was undeniable. And that truth was about to come crashing down on my family with the force of something they couldn't control. Something they couldn't spin. Something real. The lawsuit hit 5 days later. I was at work when the process server found me. A woman in her 50s with tired eyes handed me a manila envelope outside the nonprofit office during my lunch break. She asked if I was Natalie Harper. When I confirmed, she pressed the envelope into my hands and walked away without another word. I stood on the sidewalk holding it, knowing exactly what it was before I even opened it. Inside was a civil complaint. Victoria Harper versus Natalie Harper. The plaintiff alleged intentional interference with business relationships, tortious interference with contractual obligations, and intentional infliction of emotional distress. She was suing me for $68,000 in damages. I read through the document slowly, my sandwich forgotten on the bench beside me. The language was formal and cold. It detailed every vendor cancellation. Every lost deposit. Every breach of contract. It painted me as vindictive, unstable, and malicious. A jealous sister who couldn't stand to see her successful sibling happy. There was an entire paragraph about my alleged history of emotional instability. Claims that I'd been in therapy on and off for years. That I'd struggled to maintain employment. That I'd exhibited erratic behavior at family gatherings. None of it was true, but it was written with enough authority that someone reading it might believe it. The complaint also included a request for a temporary restraining order preventing me from contacting Victoria, attending any wedding-related events, or coming within 500 feet of her residence. I folded the papers carefully and put them back in the envelope. My hands were steady. I wasn't surprised. Rachel had warned me this was coming. I called her office from my cell phone. Her assistant put me through immediately. They served you, Rachel said. It wasn't a question. Yes. About 20 minutes ago. Come in tomorrow morning. We'll file our response and counter with the trust claim. This is actually good timing for us. I didn't see how any of this was good, but I trusted her. We scheduled a meeting for 8 the next morning. When I hung up, I sat on that bench for a long time watching people walk past. Tourists taking photos of the bridges. Students heading to class. Someone walking 3 dogs that kept getting tangled. Normal life continuing around me while mine fractured into something unrecognizable. That evening, Aunt Diane called. I heard about the lawsuit, she said without preamble. Your mother is telling everyone you're having a mental breakdown. I'm not. I know you're not. But they're going to use that narrative to discredit you. You need to be prepared for that. I am. She paused. Natalie, I want you to know that I believe you. Whatever happened, whatever you did, I know it didn't come from nowhere. Thank you. That means everything. There was noise in the background. Dishes clattering. She was cooking something. Have you eaten today? I looked at my abandoned sandwich, now soggy from condensation. Not really. Come over. I'll make dinner. An hour later I was sitting in Diane's small kitchen in southeast Portland. The house smelled like garlic and rosemary. She handed me a glass of red wine and gestured for me to sit. She didn't ask questions while she cooked. Just let me exist in the space. When dinner was ready, roasted chicken with vegetables and crusty bread, we ate mostly in silence. It wasn't uncomfortable. It was the first peaceful moment I'd had in over a week. After we finished, she poured us both more wine and leaned back in her chair. Tell me what you need. I don't know yet. I'm meeting with my attorney tomorrow. We're filing a counterclaim about the trust. Her eyebrows rose. What trust? So I explained. Everything Gerald Stevens had told me. The $150,000. The unauthorized withdrawals. The years of theft disguised as normal expenses. Diane's expression darkened as I talked. When I finished, she was quiet for a long moment. Your grandmother told me about that trust, she finally said. I looked up sharply. What? Years ago. Before she died. She said she wanted to make sure both you and Victoria would be taken care of. She was worried about your mother's influence. Worried that Victoria was becoming too much like Christine. She wanted you to have resources independent of your parents. Did she say anything else? Diane swirled her wine. She said she was afraid your mother would find a way to control it. That's why she set it up with those protections. The requirement for both signatures. She specifically wanted you to have equal say. Why didn't you tell me? Diane met my eyes. Because your grandmother swore me to secrecy. She said the trust would be revealed to you when you turned 25. I assumed that happened. I assumed you knew. I never knew. Not until this week. She looked stricken. I'm so sorry. If I'd realized they kept it from you, I would have said something. It's not your fault. It's theirs. We sat with that truth for a while. The kitchen clock ticked. Outside, a dog barked. Diane finally spoke again. What do you need from me? Testimony. If this goes to court, I need someone who can confirm what Grandma intended. Someone the family can't dismiss as an outsider. You'll have it, she said without hesitation. Whatever you need. I stayed at Diane's house until almost 11. When I finally drove home, the streets were empty and slick with rain. My apartment felt cold when I walked in. I turned on every light and made tea I didn't drink. I tried to watch something on TV but couldn't focus. Eventually I gave up and went to bed, knowing sleep wouldn't come easy. It didn't. I lay awake replaying everything. The dress fitting. The cancellations. The lawsuit. The trust. All of it tangled together into something too large to fully comprehend. The next morning I met Rachel at her office. She had a stack of documents ready. Our counter-complaint was 32 pages long. It detailed every unauthorized withdrawal from the trust. It included Gerald Stevens' affidavit confirming the irregularities. It cited specific Oregon statutes regarding fiduciary duty and breach of trust. And it demanded full restitution plus interest, removal of Victoria as trustee, and a formal audit of all estate transactions. This is aggressive, Rachel said, sliding the papers across her desk. But we need to be. Your sister threw the first punch. We're hitting back harder. What happens now? We file this with the court today. Then we serve Victoria and your mother. They'll have 30 days to respond. In the meantime, we can request an emergency hearing to freeze the remaining trust assets and prevent any further withdrawals. How long until we actually get in front of a judge? Probably 2 to 3 months for a full hearing. But we might get a preliminary hearing within a few weeks. I signed everywhere she indicated. My signature felt stronger than it had in years. Decisive. Clear. When we finished, Rachel leaned back in her chair. You should know that your sister's attorney reached out to my office yesterday. What did they say? They wanted to know if you'd be open to mediation. Settling this outside of court. I felt my jaw tighten. What did you tell them? That I'd discuss it with you. But Natalie, I don't recommend it. Mediation in cases like this tends to favor the aggressor. They'll try to negotiate you down to accepting a fraction of what you're owed in exchange for dropping your claim. They'll frame it as the reasonable solution. The mature thing to do. But it's just another way to control you. I don't want to mediate. Good. Then we go to trial. I left her office feeling something like clarity. The path ahead was difficult, but it was mine. I wasn't being pushed around anymore. I wasn't accommodating anyone's comfort at the expense of my own truth. For the first time in my life, I was fighting back with everything I had. That afternoon, my phone rang. It was Derek. I answered carefully, already recording. Natalie, we need to talk. Okay. Victoria just got served with your counter lawsuit. She's losing her mind. I didn't respond. She's saying you're making everything up. That your grandmother never intended for you to have equal access to the trust. That you're twisting the facts to make her look bad. Is that what you believe? There was a long pause. I don't know what I believe anymore. But I need to ask you something and I need you to be honest with me. Ask. Did Victoria ever tell you about the trust? About the money your grandmother left? Another pause. This one longer. No. She never mentioned it. Not once. I let that sink in. We'd been together for 3 years. Engaged for 8 months. And she'd never told him about a 6-figure trust fund she'd been managing and spending. That tells you something, doesn't it? Yeah, he said quietly. It does. We talked for another 10 minutes. He asked questions about the withdrawals. About the timeline. About whether I'd really had no idea the money existed. I answered everything honestly. By the end of the conversation, his voice had changed. The doubt was gone. In its place was something harder. Anger maybe. Or betrayal. Before we hung up, he said one more thing. I'm calling off the engagement. I'm sorry. I can't marry her. Not after this. Not after everything that's come out. I don't know who she is anymore. I felt a strange mix of emotions. Relief that he was seeing the truth. But also sadness. Not for Victoria. For him. For the loss of whatever he thought he was building. I'm sorry, Derek. Don't be. You did me a favor. If this hadn't happened, I would have married someone who lies without blinking. Someone who steals from her own sister and thinks she's entitled to it. So thank you. We ended the call. I sat on my couch staring at my phone. Derek was gone. The wedding was gone. And now the entire carefully constructed facade of Victoria's perfect life was crumbling. I should have felt victorious. But I just felt tired. 2 days later, I got a call from a number I didn't recognize. I answered cautiously. Is this Natalie Harper? Yes. Who's this? My name is Marcus Bell. I'm a florist. I worked on your sister's wedding before it was cancelled. Okay. I'm calling because I think you should know something. Your sister came to my shop yesterday demanding a refund of her deposit. When I explained that our cancellation policy doesn't allow refunds within 30 days, she threatened me. Said she'd ruin my business. Said she'd leave negative reviews everywhere. Said she'd make sure no one in Portland ever used my services again. I'm sorry you had to deal with that. That's not why I'm calling. I'm calling because while she was yelling at me, she said something. She said that if her crazy sister hadn't stolen from the family and sabotaged everything, none of this would be happening. She said you'd been siphoning money for years and that she was going to make sure everyone knew what kind of person you really are. I felt ice run through my veins. She said I was stealing? Yes. In front of multiple customers. I wanted you to know because it sounded like defamation to me. And I thought you might want documentation. I have security camera footage of the whole incident. Can you send that to me? Absolutely. I'll email it today. Also, for what it's worth, I've worked hundreds of weddings. I've seen all kinds of family drama. But the way your sister talked about you, the venom in it, that was something else. You might want to protect yourself legally. Thank you. I mean that. He gave me his email and we hung up. I immediately forwarded his contact information to Rachel with a brief explanation. She responded within an hour. This is good. If she's making false statements about you publicly, we can add defamation to our counterclaim. Keep documenting everything. Every conversation. Every threat. Every lie. We're building a case that's going to be impossible to defend against. That evening, I received an email from Marcus with the security footage attached. I watched it 3 times. Victoria standing in his shop, face red, finger pointing, voice raised loud enough that other customers turned to stare. The audio was clear. Every word she said about me, every accusation, every threat, captured perfectly. I saved it to 3 different drives. Then I sent copies to Rachel and to Diane. This wasn't just about money anymore. It was about reputation. About truth. About making sure that when this was all over, people knew exactly who had been lying and who had been fighting for what was right. The next morning, I woke to a text from Aunt Diane. Your mother wants to meet. Just the 2 of you. She says she wants to talk without lawyers. What should I do? I called Rachel immediately. She answered on the second ring, voice sharp and alert despite it being barely 7 in the morning. Don't meet with her alone, Rachel said. If you do meet, it needs to be in a public place with a witness present. And you need to record everything. Do you think I should go? That's your call. But understand that this is likely an attempt to manipulate you. To get you to drop the lawsuit or accept some kind of settlement that benefits them. Your mother is going to try to use guilt, family obligation, whatever emotional leverage she has. You need to be ready for that. I'll think about it. One more thing. If you do go, don't make any agreements. Don't sign anything. Don't promise anything. Just listen and observe. Everything she says is evidence. I texted Diane back. Tell her I'll meet her. Tomorrow. 1 p.m. The Heathman Restaurant. Private dining room if possible. And you're coming with me. Diane responded immediately. I'll be there. The next day arrived gray and cold. I dressed carefully. Slacks and a sweater. Nothing too formal but nothing casual either. I wanted to look put together. Stable. The opposite of how they were trying to paint me. Diane picked me up at 12:30. We drove downtown in silence. The Heathman was a historic hotel in the heart of the city. Old money. Old elegance. The kind of place Mom would choose because it projected respectability. We arrived 10 minutes early and were shown to a private dining room on the 2nd floor. Dark wood paneling. Heavy curtains. A table set for 4 even though only 3 of us were expected. Diane and I sat on one side. I placed my phone on the table, recording app already running. At exactly 1 p.m., Mom walked in. She wore a cream-colored suit. Hair perfect. Makeup flawless. She looked at Diane with barely concealed annoyance. I didn't realize you'd be joining us. I didn't realize you expected me to come alone. Mom's jaw tightened but she sat down across from us. A server appeared and asked about drinks. Mom ordered sparkling water. Diane and I did the same. When the server left, silence filled the room. Mom folded her hands on the table. Natalie, this has gone too far. I stared at her. Has it? You've destroyed your sister's wedding. You filed a frivolous lawsuit. You've made wild accusations about theft and fraud. And now you've turned Derek against her. He ended the engagement. Did you know that? I didn't respond. Because of you, Mom continued. Because of your jealousy and your vindictiveness. Victoria is heartbroken. She's humiliated. And you don't even care. She humiliated me first, I said quietly. At a dress fitting. In front of strangers. She said things that can't be unsaid. And you sat there and let it happen. Mom waved her hand dismissively. Victoria was giving you honest feedback. You've always been too sensitive. That's not feedback. That's cruelty. We're not here to debate semantics. We're here because you need to drop this lawsuit and apologize to your sister. I will do neither of those things. Mom's expression hardened. Then you leave me no choice. I've spoken with our attorney. If you proceed with this, we will countersue for damages, legal fees, and emotional distress. We will drag this through the courts for years. We will make sure everyone knows what you've done. And when it's over, you'll have nothing. Not money. Not family. Nothing. I met her eyes. I already have nothing from this family. You've made sure of that my entire life. That's absurd. You've had every advantage. Is that what you call it? Being excluded from family events? Being compared to Victoria constantly and found lacking? Being told I'm an embarrassment? You're being dramatic. Am I? I pulled out my phone and opened the video Marcus had sent. I turned it toward her and pressed play. Victoria's voice filled the room. Loud and venomous. Talking about her crazy sister. Talking about theft. Talking about sabotage. Mom watched for 10 seconds before looking away. That proves nothing. It proves she's lying about me publicly. Making false accusations. Defaming my character. That's actionable. She was upset. People say things when they're upset. Not like that. Not lies that could destroy someone's reputation. Diane leaned forward. Christine, you need to take responsibility for what you and Victoria have done. That money wasn't just Victoria's. It was both of theirs. And you know it. Mom turned to her sister. Stay out of this. This doesn't concern you. It concerns me when you steal from your daughter and then gaslight her into thinking she's the problem. We didn't steal anything. Then why didn't Natalie know about the trust? Why wasn't she asked to approve withdrawals? Why was her signature forged on documents? Her signature was not forged. I have the accountant's testimony saying otherwise. Mom's composure cracked slightly. Her hands tensed on the table. This is ridiculous. You're listening to the lies of a disgruntled accountant and a confused girl who doesn't understand how family finances work. I understand perfectly. You and Victoria took money that belonged to both of us and spent it without my knowledge or consent. That's theft. It's also betrayal. And I'm not letting it go. Mom stood abruptly. Fine. If you want to destroy this family, go ahead. But don't expect to walk away unscathed. We will fight you with everything we have. I'm counting on it. She grabbed her purse and walked out without another word. The door closed behind her with a heavy thud. Diane and I sat in silence for a moment. Then she reached across the table and squeezed my hand. You did well. I don't feel like I did well. I feel like I just declared war. You didn't declare it. You just stopped pretending it wasn't already happening. We left the restaurant and walked to Diane's car. The city felt different somehow. Sharper. More real. Like I was seeing it clearly for the first time. That night, I couldn't settle. I paced my apartment. Made tea I didn't drink. Stared out the window at the lights of the city. Around midnight, my phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. This is Victoria. We need to talk. Face to face. Just you and me. I stared at the message for a long time. Then I forwarded it to Rachel. Her response came through 2 minutes later. Don't respond. Don't engage. She's trying to get you alone so there are no witnesses to whatever she says. Let her sweat. I took her advice. I didn't reply. But I didn't sleep either. Because I knew the real battle was just beginning. And whatever happened next was going to determine not just the outcome of the lawsuit, but who I was going to be when all of this was over. The preliminary hearing was set for 3 weeks later. During that time, the silence from my family was deafening. No calls. No texts. Nothing. It was like they'd collectively decided I no longer existed. In some ways, it was a relief. But in others, it felt like the calm before something catastrophic. Rachel filed our motion to freeze the remaining trust assets and remove Victoria as trustee. The court granted a temporary order pending the hearing, which meant Victoria couldn't touch the remaining $12,000. When I got the notification from Rachel, I felt something shift. It was the first tangible win. Small, but real. Derek called me a week before the hearing. His voice sounded hollow. I moved out, he said without preamble. I'm staying with a friend until I figure out what's next. Victoria tried to convince me that you manipulated the accountant. That you forged documents to make her look bad. But I spoke to Gerald Stevens myself. He walked me through everything. The timeline. The withdrawals. The lack of your authorization. She lied to me for years, Natalie. About money. About you. About who she really is. I'm sorry you're going through this. He laughed bitterly. You're apologizing to me? You're the one who got robbed. I didn't know what to say to that. We talked for a few more minutes. He told me he was trying to get back the ring, which Victoria refused to return. He said his parents were furious when they found out about the trust situation. That they'd always had reservations about Victoria but kept quiet because they wanted him to be happy. Before we hung up, he said something that stuck with me. You were braver than anyone gave you credit for. Standing up to them. Fighting back. I hope you know that. The night before the hearing, I couldn't eat. Diane came over with soup and bread, but I barely touched it. We sat on my couch watching the rain streak down the windows. You ready for tomorrow? She asked. I don't know. What if the judge doesn't believe me? What if they convince everyone that I'm the problem? Rachel has the evidence. Gerald has the records. Camila has the footage. The truth is on your side. But what if truth isn't enough? She turned to look at me. Then you keep fighting. Because the alternative is letting them win. And you've come too far to let that happen now. I woke at 5 the next morning. The hearing wasn't until 10, but sleep was impossible. I showered and dressed in the only suit I owned. Navy blue. Professional. I looked at myself in the mirror and barely recognized the person staring back. Thinner. Harder. But also stronger somehow. At 8:30, Diane picked me up. We drove to the courthouse in silence. Rachel met us outside, carrying a leather briefcase and wearing an expression of focused intensity. Inside, the building smelled like old paper and floor polish. We went through security and took the elevator to the 4th floor. The hallway outside the courtroom was busy with attorneys and clients having last-minute conversations in hushed tones. Then I saw them. Mom and Victoria standing near the opposite end of the hall with their attorney, a man in his 60s with silver hair and an expensive suit. Victoria looked pale. She'd lost weight. Her hair was pulled back severely and she wore minimal makeup. She looked nothing like the glowing bride from the dress fitting. When her eyes met mine, there was nothing but cold hatred. Mom whispered something to their attorney. He nodded and made a note on his legal pad. Rachel touched my elbow. Don't react. Don't engage. Let them posture. We have what we need. At exactly 10 o'clock, the bailiff called our case. We filed into the courtroom. It was smaller than I expected. Wood paneling. High ceilings. The judge's bench elevated at the front. Judge Catherine Brennan presiding, according to the nameplate. She was in her 50s with sharp eyes and an air of no-nonsense authority. We took our seats at the plaintiff's table. Victoria and Mom sat at the defendant's table with their attorney. The judge reviewed the case file in silence for what felt like an eternity. Then she looked up. This is a preliminary hearing to address the motion to freeze trust assets and remove the current trustee. She looked at Rachel. Counselor, you may present your argument. Rachel stood smoothly. Your Honor, we're here today because the respondent, Victoria Harper, has systematically violated her fiduciary duty as trustee of the Helen Harper Family Trust. She proceeded to lay out the case with surgical precision. The trust established in 2011 with $150,000. The requirement for dual authorization on withdrawals over $10,000. The fact that dozens of such withdrawals had been made without my knowledge or consent. Gerald Stevens' testimony confirming the irregularities. The forged signatures on authorization documents. Rachel presented bank statements. Copies of withdrawal requests. Emails between Victoria and the Trust's financial institution. Every piece of evidence was clear, documented, irrefutable. She spoke for 20 minutes. Victoria's attorney, a man named Harold Pearson, stood when Rachel finished. Your Honor, my client categorically denies any wrongdoing. The trust was managed in good faith with the full knowledge and implicit consent of both beneficiaries. Ms. Natalie Harper was aware of the trust and chose not to be involved in its day-to-day management. Judge Brennan looked at me. Ms. Harper, when did you first become aware of this trust's existence? I stood carefully. Last month, Your Honor. On October 8th, when I was contacted by the family accountant, Gerald Stevens. Prior to that, I had no knowledge that the trust existed. And you never signed any authorization forms for withdrawals? No, Your Honor. Never. Pearson jumped in. Your Honor, my client has documentation showing that Ms. Natalie Harper was informed of the trust on multiple occasions. These allegations of ignorance are simply not credible. Rachel held up a hand. Your Honor, we've subpoenaed the relevant documents. Not a single authorization form bears my client's authentic signature. We have a handwriting expert prepared to testify that the signatures in question are forgeries. Judge Brennan leaned back. Mr. Pearson, do you have evidence that Ms. Natalie Harper was informed of the trust? Pearson shuffled papers. We have testimony from my client and from Mrs. Christine Harper stating that family discussions about the trust occurred regularly. Testimony, Rachel said calmly, is not documentation. And given that both witnesses have a vested interest in the outcome, their credibility is questionable at best. The judge made a note. What about the trust's financial institution? Were they aware that dual authorization was required? Rachel nodded. Yes, Your Honor. The bank has confirmed that they were never properly notified of the dual authorization requirement. The trustee, Victoria Harper, presented herself as having sole authority. The institution relied on her representations in good faith. Judge Brennan looked at Pearson. That's concerning. If the trustee misrepresented her authority to the financial institution, that suggests intentional deception rather than mere oversight. Pearson's expression tightened. Your Honor, my client was appointed trustee by her mother, the former trustee, and acted in what she believed to be the best interests of the family. She's not a lawyer. She's not a financial expert. Any errors were made in good faith. Rachel stepped forward. Your Honor, ignorance of fiduciary duty is not a defense. Ms. Victoria Harper accepted the role of trustee. With that role comes legal responsibilities. She was obligated to understand those responsibilities and to execute them properly. She failed to do so. Repeatedly. And in doing so, she depleted 92% of the trust's assets without the required consent of her co-beneficiary. Judge Brennan turned to Victoria. Ms. Victoria Harper, how do you explain the withdrawals totaling over $130,000 without your sister's authorization? Victoria stood slowly. She glanced at Pearson, who nodded slightly. Your Honor, my sister was always difficult to reach. She moved frequently. Changed jobs. I made attempts to involve her but she was unresponsive. Eventually, I had to make decisions for the benefit of the family. That's a lie, I said before I could stop myself. Rachel put a hand on my arm. The judge raised an eyebrow but didn't reprimand me. Miss Harper, you'll have your opportunity to speak. Ms. Victoria Harper, do you have documentation of these attempts to contact your sister? Phone records? Emails? Certified letters? Victoria hesitated. We communicated informally. Family gatherings. Phone calls. Nothing documented. So you have no proof that you attempted to obtain your sister's consent before making these substantial withdrawals? No formal proof, no. But the communication happened. Judge Brennan made another note. The lack of documentation is deeply troubling. As is the pattern of behavior. She flipped through the exhibits. A vacation described as a medical emergency. Graduate tuition when the trust was specifically designated for both beneficiaries' educational needs. Vehicle purchases. This doesn't appear to be a case of good faith errors. This appears to be systematic self-dealing. Pearson stood quickly. Your Honor, we'd like to request a continuance to gather additional documentation. Denied. You've had ample time to prepare. This is a preliminary hearing, not a trial. I'm here to determine whether the motion to freeze assets and remove the trustee has merit. Based on what I've seen today, it clearly does. Victoria's face went white. Mom reached over and gripped her hand. The judge continued. The trust assets will remain frozen pending a full evidentiary hearing. Victoria Harper is removed as trustee effective immediately. The court will appoint a neutral third-party trustee to manage the remaining assets until this matter is resolved. What about my lawsuit? Pearson asked quickly. My client has filed a civil suit against Ms. Natalie Harper for damages related to her interference with my client's wedding. Judge Brennan looked at him over her reading glasses. That's a separate matter for a different hearing. But I will note for the record that if your client is found to have committed fraud or breach of fiduciary duty in this case, it may impact the viability of her claims in the other matter. Court is adjourned. The gavel came down with a sharp crack. I sat frozen for a moment. Then Rachel turned to me with the smallest smile. We won. Victoria stood abruptly, knocking her chair back. This isn't over, she hissed across the aisle. Not even close. Miss Harper, Pearson said sharply, trying to rein her in. But she ignored him. She pointed at me, her hand shaking. You destroyed my life. You took everything from me. And for what? Money? Jealousy? I stood up slowly, meeting her eyes. I took back what was mine. There's a difference. Mom stood too, putting a hand on Victoria's arm. Let's go. We're leaving. But Victoria shook her off. Do you feel good about yourself? She demanded. Do you feel vindicated? I don't feel anything, I said quietly. And that's the saddest part of all of this. I should feel angry or satisfied or something. But all I feel is tired. Tired of being treated like I don't matter. Tired of being the villain in your story when all I ever wanted was to be seen. The bailiff stepped forward. Ladies, this needs to end. Now. Victoria stared at me for one more long moment. Then she turned and walked out, Mom following close behind. Pearson gathered his papers quickly and left without a word. The courtroom emptied until it was just Rachel, Diane, and me. You did it, Diane said softly, putting an arm around my shoulders. I don't know what I did. You stood up. You told the truth. And the judge believed you. We walked out of the courthouse into cold autumn air. The trees lining the street had turned gold and red. Leaves scattered across the pavement. I took a deep breath, feeling something shift inside my chest. Not relief exactly. But maybe the beginning of it. Rachel stopped on the courthouse steps. The full hearing is scheduled for January. That's when we'll pursue restitution. In the meantime, the neutral trustee will conduct a full audit. Every transaction will be examined. If there's more fraud, we'll find it. What happens to Victoria? Depends on what the audit reveals. If there's evidence of criminal fraud, the district attorney could get involved. Civil penalties at minimum. Possibly criminal charges. She could face jail time. It's possible. Though unlikely for a first offense. More likely would be financial penalties, restitution, and probation. I nodded slowly, trying to process it all. Diane drove me home. We stopped for coffee on the way and sat in the car outside my building for a long time, not talking, just being present. When I finally went inside, my apartment felt different. Lighter somehow. Like something heavy had been lifted. That night, Derek called. I heard what happened at the hearing. Word travels fast. He laughed without humor. Victoria called me. She wanted me to testify on her behalf at the full trial. Said she needs character witnesses. What did you tell her? That she should probably find someone who still believes her character is worth defending. We talked for a few more minutes. He told me he'd gotten the ring back finally. That he was thinking about moving to Seattle for a fresh start. That he hoped I'd find peace after all of this. I hope you do too, I said. When we hung up, I realized I meant it. I didn't wish him harm. I didn't wish any of them harm, really. I just wished they'd left me alone. The weeks following the hearing were strange. Quiet in a way I wasn't used to. Victoria stopped contacting me entirely. Mom sent one terse email through her lawyer stating that I was no longer welcome at family events. As if I'd been clamoring to attend. The neutral trustee, a woman named Sandra Okoye, contacted me to introduce herself and explain the audit process. She was thorough and professional. She told me the audit would take approximately 6 weeks and that she'd provide a full report to the court. In the meantime, I went back to work. Back to my regular life. But nothing felt regular anymore. One Saturday afternoon in late November, I drove to Powell's City of Books. I hadn't been there since Grandma died. It felt like time. The store was exactly as I remembered. Towering shelves. The smell of old paper. People browsing quietly in every corner. I climbed the stairs to the top floor and stepped out onto the rooftop garden. It was cold but clear. The city spread out below in every direction. I stood at the railing holding a paper cup of tea from the cafe downstairs. This was where Grandma used to bring me every Saturday when I was little. We'd browse for hours, then come up here and she'd tell me stories. Not from books. Just from her life. Her childhood. Her dreams. The mistakes she'd made and the things she'd learned. I missed her so much in that moment it physically hurt. I pulled the silver locket from my pocket. I'd been carrying it with me every day since the dress fitting. I opened it and looked at the tiny photo inside. Grandma smiling. Young and hopeful. I closed my eyes and let myself cry. Not from sadness exactly. From release. When I opened my eyes, someone was standing a few feet away. Aunt Diane. She smiled gently. I had a feeling I'd find you here. How did you know? Because your grandmother told me this was your place. Yours and hers. She came and stood beside me at the railing. We stood in silence for a while. Then she spoke. You know what she'd say if she were here? What? That you're exactly who she hoped you'd be. Someone who doesn't back down. Someone who knows her worth. I wiped my face with the back of my hand. I don't feel strong. You don't have to feel it for it to be true. We stayed on that rooftop for over an hour. Talking about Grandma. About the family. About what came next. When we finally left, the sun was starting to set. The sky turned orange and pink over the West Hills. We walked to Diane's car and she drove me home. Before I got out, she handed me an envelope. What's this? Open it later. When you need a reminder. I took it upstairs and set it on my kitchen table. I made dinner. Did dishes. Changed into comfortable clothes. Then I sat down and opened the envelope. Inside was a letter. Handwritten. The paper was old, slightly yellowed. I recognized the handwriting immediately. Grandma's. My dearest Natalie, if you're reading this, then Diane has given you this letter because you needed it. I'm writing this now, while I'm still healthy, because I know that someday the family dynamics might become difficult for you. Your mother and Victoria are alike in ways that worry me. They measure worth by appearance and status. They don't understand that true value comes from character. From kindness. From standing up for what's right even when it costs you something. I set up the trust for you and your sister because I wanted you both to have security. But I also wanted you to have power. The power to say no. The power to walk away if you needed to. The power to build a life on your own terms. If you're reading this, I suspect Victoria has tried to take that power from you. I suspect your mother has enabled it. And I suspect you've had to fight back in ways that feel scary and wrong. But Natalie, fighting back isn't wrong. Protecting yourself isn't selfish. And claiming what's yours isn't greedy. You are my heart. You always have been. You were the child who asked questions. Who noticed when others were hurting. Who gave more than you received and never demanded recognition for it. The world needs more people like you. Don't let them convince you otherwise. Don't let them make you small. Be big. Be loud. Be exactly who you are. And know that I'm proud of you. Always. With all my love, Grandma Helen. I read the letter 3 times. Then I folded it carefully and put it back in the envelope. I placed it on my bookshelf next to a photo of Grandma and me at Powell's when I was 8. She had her arm around me and we were both laughing at something. I couldn't remember what. But I remembered the feeling. Safe. Loved. Seen. The full hearing came in mid-January. The neutral trustees' audit had uncovered even more irregularities. Withdrawals that had been categorized as charitable donations but had actually gone to Victoria's personal accounts. Transfers labeled as property taxes that had funded luxury purchases. The total misappropriated funds came to $142,000. Judge Brennan reviewed the audit report with an expression of barely concealed anger. This is one of the most egregious cases of breach of fiduciary duty I've encountered in my career. She ruled in my favor on every count. Full restitution ordered. Victoria was required to repay the entire amount plus interest. 6% annually calculated from the date of each withdrawal. The total came to just over $163,000. Additionally, Victoria was ordered to pay my legal fees. All $17,000 of them. Her lawsuit against me for wedding damages was dismissed with prejudice, meaning she couldn't refile. The judge noted that Victoria's own misconduct had directly contributed to the chain of events leading to the wedding cancellation and that she couldn't claim damages from consequences of her own actions. When the gavel came down, Victoria sat motionless. Mom stared straight ahead, expressionless. I felt Diane squeeze my hand under the table. Outside the courthouse, reporters were waiting. News of the case had leaked and apparently trust fund fraud made for good headlines. Rachel handled them professionally while Diane and I slipped out a side entrance. We drove to a small restaurant in Southeast and ordered lunch neither of us were hungry for. So what now? Diane asked. I don't know. Start over, I guess. You're not starting over, she said firmly. You're starting fresh. There's a difference. Over the next few months, the money was slowly repaid. Victoria sold her car. Sold jewelry. Took out loans. Mom contributed some, though she never acknowledged wrongdoing. Never apologized. Never reached out at all. By April, the full amount had been transferred back into the trust under Sandra Okoye's management. She invested it conservatively and sent me quarterly reports. I didn't touch it right away. I just let it sit there. Proof that I'd fought and won. Proof that I mattered. Eventually, I used some of it to go back to school. I'd always wanted to finish my degree in social work but had never been able to afford it. I enrolled part-time at Portland State. I also started volunteering with an organization that helped women leave abusive family situations. It felt important. Using what I'd learned to help others find their own strength. One warm evening in May, I was back on the rooftop at Powell's. I'd started coming here once a month. A ritual of sorts. A way to stay connected to Grandma and to the person I was becoming. Someone sat down on the bench beside me. I turned, expecting a stranger. It was Victoria. She looked different. Thinner. Older. Her hair was shorter, unstyled. She wore jeans and a plain sweater. No jewelry. No designer bag. Just her. We sat in silence for a long moment. I almost got up and left. But something kept me there. I don't expect you to forgive me, she finally said. Her voice was quiet. Uncertain. Good. Because I don't. I know. I just wanted you to know that I'm sorry. For what I said at the fitting. For what I did with the money. For all of it. I looked at her. She wasn't crying. Wasn't performing. She just looked tired. Why are you telling me this? Because my therapist said I needed to. And because it's true. We sat with that for a minute. Then I spoke. You spent years making me feel worthless. You took money that was meant to help both of us and used it to build a life that made me feel even smaller. And when I finally stood up for myself, you tried to destroy me. She nodded slowly. I know. I don't have an excuse. Mom raised me to think that success meant being better than other people. Better than you. And I believed it for so long that I didn't even realize how cruel I'd become. That doesn't make it okay. No. It doesn't. But maybe it explains it. I thought about that. About cycles of behavior. About how hurt people hurt people. It didn't absolve her. But maybe it helped me understand. Are you here because you want something from me? She asked. Forgiveness? Reconciliation? I thought about it. Really thought about it. No. I don't need anything from you. Then why did you stay when I sat down? I don't know. Maybe because part of me wanted to hear you say you were sorry. Even if it doesn't change anything. Does it? Change anything? I shook my head. Not really. But maybe that's okay. She stood up slowly. I hope you have a good life, Natalie. I mean that. I watched her walk away. Watched her disappear down the stairs. And I felt something I didn't expect. Not forgiveness. Not reconciliation. But closure. The kind that comes when you realize you don't need anything from the person who hurt you. Not their apology. Not their understanding. Not their validation. You just need to know that you survived them. As spring turned to summer, I found myself thinking less about the lawsuit. Less about Victoria and Mom. Less about what had been taken and what I'd fought to get back. Instead, I thought about what I wanted to build. Who I wanted to become. I graduated with my social work degree in December. Diane threw me a small party. Just a few friends. Some coworkers. Nothing elaborate. But it felt real. Earned. Mine. I framed my diploma and hung it in my apartment next to Grandma's letter. Reminders of where I'd been and where I was going. One cold January morning, exactly a year after the final hearing, I woke up and realized something had shifted. The anger was gone. The hurt was gone. In their place was something quieter. Something like peace. I made coffee and stood at my window watching the city wake up. Somewhere out there, Victoria was living her life. Mom was living hers. They'd probably never acknowledge what they'd done. Probably never truly understand the damage they'd caused. And that was okay. Because I didn't need them to. I'd learned that justice doesn't always look like punishment. Sometimes it just looks like boundaries. Like choosing yourself. Like walking away and building something better in the space they used to occupy. I thought about everything that had happened. The dress fitting. The cancellations. The lawsuit. The hearings. The letters and evidence and fights. All of it had led me here. To this quiet morning. To this small apartment. To this life I was building piece by piece on my own terms. And I realized something important. I hadn't destroyed Victoria's wedding to hurt her. I'd done it because I'd finally reached the point where I valued myself more than I valued keeping the peace. That was the real victory. Not the money. Not the court ruling. Not even the apology. It was the moment I decided I mattered. That my dignity mattered. That my truth mattered. And once I knew that, really knew it, nothing they said or did could take it away. I picked up my phone and opened my photos. Scrolled back to a picture of Grandma and me at Powell's. Her arm around my shoulders. Both of us smiling. I set it as my lock screen. A reminder. Not of what I'd lost, but of what I'd always had. Someone who believed in me. Someone who saw my worth even when I couldn't see it myself. And now, finally, I could see it too. The sun broke through the clouds, spilling gold across the city. I finished my coffee. Got dressed. And stepped out into the day. There was work to do. A life to live. A future to build. And for the first time in as long as I could remember, I was excited about all of it. Up next, you've got 2 more standout stories right on your screen. If this one hit the mark, you won't want to pass these up. Just click and check them out.